Well, good Tuesday evening, everyone. Welcome to Bowling with the Pfeff, a platform for you to share your unique bowling story with the Pfeff, me, a regular guy who's grown a beard over the course of this. I've had a couple people ask me why I grew the beard. I kind of do that once in a while, and actually, this holiday gift made it seem kind of strange if I didn't have a beard. This guy has one, thanks to Santa Claus, I guess, for the benefit of my 8-year-old. Um, Bringing in a nice little gift there. I've actually had it here most of these shows, looking for a way to get it involved. I just was a little nervous setting up the other camera, but this is it's a work in progress, and I think I got it okay this time. But anyway, we're here to talk about bowling, and if you love bowling and love to talk about bowling, get in touch with me, and we'll have you on the show. It's bit.ly/bowling with the Pfeff to apply to be on, or email me at bowlingwiththepfeff@yahoo.com. So let's get into our first frame. The final five is set in the PBA Players Championship, if you've been keeping track, and a lot of people have. With that tournament, it started with 5 regional sites. It went to 5 stepladder finals, and now we have our final 5 in my hastily put together graphic there. Anthony Simonson, Francois Lavoie, Tom Smallwood, Kyle Troop, and Dick Allen will do battle coming up this weekend for $250,000 and one of the richest prizes, grand prizes ever on the PBA Tour. Exciting stuff, to say the least. So what we want to know is who you think will take the PBA Players Championship. This is kind of a neat format because we can do this, although it will be on YouTube essentially for perpetuity. So you can make your guess now, and if someone else wins, hey, who can guess these things right every time, right? If your guy wins, then you can point at that and say, hey, I guessed it right. In the days leading up to the final 3 games in the stepladder, and I don't know, you can tell all your friends about it, or you can watch the thing and then post the winner afterwards and try and take credit for you, but you might take some crap, if you try it that way. But anyway, if you think take your guess, put it in our chat. The chat is live right now. If you're watching on replay, just throw it in the comments. We'd love to hear who you think will win the PBA Players Championship, and we'll all find that out coming this weekend, which is pretty exciting stuff. So let's get on to some more exciting stuff. The beer frame tonight, where we have one of Wisconsin's most accomplished bowlers. He has taken 29 PBA regional titles, along with another PBA title, and the name of that is escaping me. So Jeff Richgels is going to have to remind me what that 30th title was.
It was the 1993 PBA National Resident Pro Championship, which got me a one-year berth in the PBA Tournament of Champions. The last year it was in Akron, Ohio, in the old days before it returned here recently.
Yeah,
that was a special week, let me tell you.
Didn't they used to have that sign above the door that said "Through these doors"?
Walked the greatest bowlers in the world, for Riviera, and in Akron. Around the bowling alley, they had a street where every light pole had your name, a banner of your name hanging from it.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. That's the one place where you felt like, if it can be said, you felt like a real professional athlete there, where you were just treated just unbelievable the whole week. The whole tour was like that then, but it was really special in Akron. Going beyond just the bowling fans and the bowling media locally, it was like the whole community, because Akron really owned that tournament, and it was the week everyone always aspired to get to.
Sure. Speaking of PBA majors, of course, we're talking initially about the PBA Players Championship. Can I ask who you think will win? I know that's kind of putting you on the spot, especially in your role as a bowling writer, which we're going to talk about later on. But who do you think will win, Jeff?
Well, I would prefer to answer that after Saturday, because what happens Saturday determines so much of what's going to happen Sunday. I mean, one of the five guys is going to win that seeding round, 3-game seeding round, 3 p.m. Central Time Saturday on Flow Bowling. And they're going to have a roughly 48% chance, or whatever it is, historically 46%. Eric Hartman, the bowling historian, put together several years worth of trying to get, it's not complete historical data, but pretty many, like 25 years or so of numbers. And it's about 46%, I think it was, for top seeds or something like that. And so whoever gets that top seed, not only are they guaranteed a shot at 250,000, they're guaranteed 130,000 if they lose, subject to whatever chopping might go on among the players, perhaps. But also, you have to win one game. And even though top seeds don't win a lot, it's only one game. And what we've seen in these shows is the lanes are relatively soft with this 3.8 to 1 Carter 2021 pattern. And for me, that says the top seed, it's not as hard to get lined up, so to speak, as it is when the lanes have transitioned and they're really hard. So I think that's partly why you've seen 4 out of the 5 top seeds won, and easily could have been 5 out of 5 without the weird 7-9 that Jesper left and the clutch bowling of Dick Allen. It could have been 5 top seeds in 5. And I bet you could go back in all of PBA history and not find 5 straight top seeds winning. I don't know if you could find 4, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't recall it in all the years of, I'm almost the whole history of the PBA since the 70s watching, and I couldn't remember any streak like that of top seeds winning.
Yeah.
So long story short, I like whoever is the top seed. So Saturday determines it. If you made me pick someone right now, based on how people have bowled, I think it's probably either Kyle or Anthony, because I'm going to favor the high hard one and the power and the speed, and to cope with whatever transition there is. And I don't know. I have this feeling that these guys, 5 righties, they may get together and say, hey, let's try to play these lanes somewhat together and not do anything weird. Because remember, $1 million for a 300 game in that title match. And this is a 300 lane pattern. We've seen it already once in these shows, a couple more times getting close to it. And, who knows? Maybe they all get together and say, well, let's all try and play to the right and not have one guy jump way left and blow it up, and try that and say, whoever makes it to the title match, you got a chance at $1 million. And if someone does it, he gets 500,000 or 600,000, and all the other 4 guys get 100 grand. Who knows? I'm just throwing stuff out there, but it would behoove these guys. This legitimately, there's a chance. I mean, not a 50% chance. And maybe it's a 5% chance, but normally it's a 1% chance or less for that 300 in the title match. But the way the lanes are, the way the scores have been, it's not out of the realm of possibility. And if I was these guys, I would at least sit and talk about it with the ball reps and say, how do we all work together here to give us the greatest chance to do something that would probably get some attention outside the traditional bowling media?
Sure. The one thing that I'm taking from what you said is the part about the lane conditions. Now, much has been said on social media about how soft and how easy these patterns are. I'm a guy sitting on a couch, not bowling on these conditions. I mean, I want to trust my instinct and say that they're a little softer because the scores are so high, but tell me from your perspective, because you're coming at this from a different place than I am. What tells you that they're that soft? Is it the scores, or is there more to it than that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the scores are always the indicator, and just you can watch the spectos and see guys missing by 3 boards, left and right of where most of their shots are going, and still striking. That doesn't happen on most PBA lane patterns. And you can look at the ratio. It's 3.87 to 1, the main ratio, I think, the middle to the outside. That's an extraordinarily high ratio for a PBA Tour event. We didn't used to see anything over 3 to 1 very often. This is more what you might see on the PBA Senior Tour, PBA 50 Tour for lane condition toughness. And it's soft. I mean, but the thing is, it's not soft for your average league bowler. It's still, how many times have we seen guys miss the head pin on this show? I would say we've had 5 shows, 25 bowlers, so all those games. I think I can recall 3, 4, maybe 5 shots where guys have missed the head pin. So there is a point at which you go too far and it's gone. But there's another factor here that Tom Clark posted on my Facebook page today, in the comment section, and it's the topography of that pair of lanes. And if I get a chance this week, I'm going to write something. I saved this screen picture of that. The topography on that pair of lanes is very favorable, meaning it tilts. The outside boards are tilting in legally, but tilting in towards the center of the lane. So you throw that ball out to the right, you've got the bank like in a racetrack coming back. I've written many stories over the years about topography. It's not illegal. It's not a humongously large amount, but it's enough to give you that little extra turn, maybe a 2-8-10 on a bad topography lane into a light mixer or a blower strike, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah.
And then, of course, the oil helps, obviously, hold the shots on line. There's, a good volume in the middle, and there's hook to the right, so they're using not super strong balls so that whatever oil's there is giving them a little more hold. And you got 5 champions and all. This was a show of a lot of great players. So without a doubt, it's a lot of factors. But as I was saying, for the people at home, guys used to ask me back when I was good, how come you didn't make it out there? And I spent 2 years out there. I basically broke even. I had wrist problems, whatever. But bottom line, I wasn't as good as those guys, the 80s guys that were the stars of the tour, Walter and Pete and Brian Voss and Dave Ferraro, my buddy McDowell. And I used to tell people, and this is when I was good, do you know how much better I am than you? That's how much better they are than me. When I'm talking to just average league bowler and I'm, winning regionals and that, but that's the minor leagues. They're winning tour titles. So that's how I used to try to put it to people. And no matter what you think, how easy those are, 3.8 to 1 with good topography is not 10 to 1 like you have in your league. And the average bowler would not be shooting scores like that, believe me.
Yeah. We've seen a couple of relative unknowns. Kelso make a run that first show. We saw Weideman make a run that third show. Do you think that if the conditions are tougher, that they don't make those kinds of runs? Or
Well, remember that when they bowled to get to the show, they bowled 28 games, 4 7-game blocks on 4 patterns, and the scores were not high for depending which center you were at. It was like a couple of centers was only 2-teen something to make the show, and that's the top 5 out of 90, 100 guys, whatever it was, depending which region you were at. It wasn't, and those were on very tough patterns, or some of the toughest that they have. The scores weren't high, as I said, and so there's no fakes. There's no fakes out there. Now, does it help when you're a little nervous and your first time on the show and the lanes perhaps are not the U.S. Open pattern? Well, heck yeah. I mean, let's be real. I'm not going to try and blow smoke up your butt. Those guys would be the first to tell you that. It helps you relax. You might get away with a shot here or there, or your bad shot's a 4-pin or a flat 10 instead of a big split one way or the other. Great. But you're still outperforming great champion. All those shows had other champions on them. So these young guys coming up there, I'm not taking anything away from them. They shot those scores and they beat guys that had a lot of tour titles. So, obviously we have, and this is great, we had a generation where there weren't a lot of bowlers that headed out on tour. Bill O'Neill's group, Sean Rash, and that there were not a huge number of bowlers going out on tour then. Now, all of a sudden, these youngsters, holy mackerel, whatever the reasons, we could spend a whole show arguing about what the reasons are, but look at all these guys and how good they are. And not two-handers either. Ketzlow's one-handed. Yep. Ben Martinez, he's one-handed. Weidman, one-handed. So it's not like, it's just a bunch of two-handers coming up. These are young guys, a lot of college players, junior gold. They probably, I don't know for sure on all of them, but they probably got some, great coaching training that we didn't have when I was a kid, for sure. High school programs. Everything about bowling these days develops kids faster than when it was my era. So to see young bowlers who are great, and of course you have EJ and Anthony and Jesper and that, who've won many titles at a young age, when I was just getting out there and just trying to learn how bad I was and try to get better. And these guys are already got, pocketfuls of titles. So it's a different game now, and that it's good to see how many great young bowlers there are. And I didn't even know. I'll be honest, I did not know Ben Martinez. I did not. I'd heard of Zach Weidman, and I knew Kultzo. Sorry. I knew those guys from seeing their names in regionals and stuff like that, but don't really, these. It's like, wow, these guys are new to me too, pretty much.
Yeah. So I've got to ask, do you have any insight on what the patterns might be like for that 3-game block on Saturday or for the television show on Sunday? Same thing?
They're using the Carter pattern. They said from the beginning when it got to TV, all the TV shows in the seeding round would be on the Carter pattern.
Okay.
And I have a feeling that the PBA may have decided, let's have some fun with these shows. Let's use one of the softer patterns. I don't know this, but it wouldn't surprise me. Let's see if we can get a 300 on TV. Let's see if we can get a shot at that $1 million. I mean, the PBA would only benefit from someone shooting 300 for $1 million.
Right.
I can guarantee. I mean, when people have shot TV 300s, that's gotten on SportsCenter in the past. Well, how about one wins $1 million? The biggest prize in bowling history. That's going to get 30 seconds at least on SportsCenter, I would assume, and on whatever else, maybe around the horn. Pardon the interruption. It would get attention, and especially since it's going to be on Broadcast Fox.
Yep, absolutely, makes total sense. So let's get into your bowling story. When, where, and how did you start bowling? And you keep saying when I was good and back in the day. We all start somewhere, right?
Oh yeah. It's a good story that I'll give you the cliff notes on. But when my parents took me once when I was, maybe 7 or 8. I wasn't one of these 2-year-olds rolling it down the lane. Just for like a Saturday afternoon to the old Casino Lanes in Madison, which is no longer with us. It later became All-Star Lanes and is closed. I think the legend goes that I had 35 the first game. Not sure about that. I was 7, 8 years old. But then with a bunch of grade school, going into middle school buddies, a summer league at Village Lanes in Monona after 5th grade, before 6th grade, I believe. And in bowling in that league, I met at Village Lanes in Monona, which is a Madison suburb. I met Mark McDowell, who his dad was a bartender part-time and along with his other job at Village Lanes. Mark and I became real close friends. We ended up becoming junior teammates and, rivals, both against each other, with each other and against each other for good grief. It's almost 50 years now, because this was probably when we were 10 or 11 years old that we've been bowling together. And once we got into Bantams and juniors and bowled together, his dad bartended on Saturday afternoon at Village Lanes, and we'd get done with our junior league and we would go in the bar. His dad was working, so we'd do that. Have a soda and a pizza, watch the PBA tour, and, from January to April. And then if there were lanes open, we'd bowl all afternoon, until they were kicking us off for league. We were out there bowling trick shots, just bowling, betting each other for sodas, whatever. And then eventually he became a big, football star. He actually could have been the kicker for the University of Wisconsin football team. He went there his freshman year of college. And if I think it was Vince Lamia, if Vince Lamia wouldn't have had a scholarship, Mark would have probably beat him out and been the kicker for the Badgers. Might never have had a bowling career, a PBA career, but Lamia got the job if it was Vince. And Mark transferred to La Crosse, started his college bowling career, then down to West Texas State from La Crosse. But in those high school years, he didn't bowl near as much as me because he was playing more sports. Golf was the only sport I played for my freshman and sophomore years of high school. And then it was pure bowling for me. I went to men's leagues when I was 15. I was working as, the pin chaser, counter boy, whatever, at Village Lanes. And I learned how to oil lanes. All I did was bowl. I mean, hours and hours every day, every week. It got to where when I was older, I didn't practice much. But let me tell you what's that 10,000 hour rule? I put in my 10,000 hours, trust me.
I believe it.
So that's how I ended up getting to men's leagues, and then hooked up. Wisconsin's tournament scene in the late 1970s and 80s was you could find something to bowl every weekend driving no farther than to Milwaukee,
Sure.
all around southern Wisconsin, Fox Valley, Janesville. You hardly had to travel or something. There was a state match games, bowling with the champs, the non-pros. You had a couple regionals would come. You could bowl as a non-member. There was other scratch tournaments. And so I went to the University of Wisconsin for my academics. I didn't bowl college. All I do was bowl tournaments every weekend, from Labor Day to Memorial Day and whatever I could in the summer. And eventually hooked up with Rich Wonders' Kendor Corporation Fayball Group, and got me on my way, and then onto Team USA and eventually the PBA Tour in the 80s.
Wow. To be a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old in just the local league scene, let alone bowling in, competitive tournaments, what's that like? Was it intimidating? Was it, something where you thought to yourself, you know what? We all have to throw the ball down the lane. We've all got the same chance to win.
Well, without a doubt, I thought I was way better than I was. Okay. There's no doubt about that. I was a cocky little shit as a teenager, because I had a lot of talent. I did. When I was I bowled my first adult tournament like a week before I turned 16 in the summer of 78, and almost won that at Village Lanes. We had a little thing that every Thursday night, and it was actually the step ladder was on cable TV in Monona, Wisconsin. Just a little local tournament with 30 people. But anyway, and then in the fall of 78, we had a non-pro type tournament at Village Lanes, and my Daryl Mizell bowled at USBC Hall of Famer, Rich Wonders, USBC Hall of Famer, Mike Putzer, Terry Culibert. I mean, all these guys, the best bowlers in Wisconsin that I was just in awe of, but they were coming to my center, and I knew those lanes, and I won that tournament at 16 years old. And that was like, holy. But the thing is I believed I was going to win that before that weekend. I was so dumb that I was good, but I was so dumb that I could believe that I was going to win that, and allowed me to do it. And it wasn't until then I started really traveling more to different centers that had different lane conditions, and bowling against these guys who were good no matter where they went, that I started realizing, holy cow, I'm not near as good as I thought I was, because I was good at this one thing, and this, I knew how to play my home house and a couple other centers that I knew. And now all of a sudden I had to learn how to play all these other centers that, they had a deep inside shot, or Dale Traber, where he grew up, that had a gutter shot in Cedarburg. And all of a sudden I started learning how good I wasn't, as opposed to how good I was at at my A game. I had to learn to develop a B game and a C game, or more A games, basically, which I did. But the come down from winning that tournament and then struggling in a lot of stuff for the next year or two, as I started to learn, and it made me mad too. I pissed people off, no doubt about it. I was a teenager. I had a hothead. I was always mad at myself, because I just held myself to such a high standard. It took a long time to let myself not be good and be cool with it and understand it. And eventually I got better and better and better and better. And then Rich and Terry Culibert, when Gary Darashevsky went on the PBA Tour, Terry Culibert asked Rich and the group, I want to bowl doubles with Jeff. And that was really my big break. Once I got in with them, then I started getting a lot more inside information, how to think, from guys like Rich and Daryl Mizell, interacting with them, being close to them, learning, it wasn't balls so much then, but it was hand position changes and little tricks, and just getting all that osmosis was just an unbelievable thing. And just the being around them elevated my confidence as I was getting better. And then I was getting better everywhere, and it just kind of slowly built up until, then it came time for the tour.
Sure. You mentioned Team USA, and you did that before going on tour?
Yeah, the original plan for Mark and I was to go on tour together as rookies in 1986. And then I went and made Team USA in 1985, and I had my first wrist operation in 85 of 3. And and went in late 85 to Team USA to Bogota, won a couple gold medals after winning the team trials, beating Barry Asher, one of the all-time highlights of my career. Barry finished second in that team trials. It was totally cool because I knew who he was from watching him on ABC all those years, winning 10 titles. And so I was just, with my wrist and everything, I hadn't had a chance to join the PBA and bowl regionals and all that. And I told Mark, I said, I'm going to be a year behind you. I said, I'm just not going to be ready in January of 86. Go get him. You win rookie there this year, I'll win it the next year.
Yeah.
And he did it. I didn't. Ryan Schaefer was the rookie of the year. And my rookie year ended up being 87, where Mark's was 86. And, and then I was out there for 2 years.
Yeah. You said it in your USBC Hall of Fame video. You said it again tonight, I think a couple times. I learned how good I wasn't. What was it? Was it the conditions? Was it the competition? Was there stress? Was there something else that was preventing you from being at the level that you thought you should be on the national tour?
This is a kind of a hard question to answer, because the one thing I'll never know is if my wrist hadn't totally given out and I hadn't had to have it reconstructed. I don't know. I would say at my very best, I might have won a few PBA Tour titles. There's no way. I bowled against those guys, and I've covered them, and I've seen them. There is no way at my very best that I'm on the level of Pete Weber and Brian Voss and Walter. It's not close. I would never pretend that. It would be the most ridiculous statement ever for me to put myself on my level. I proved that I wasn't there. But if you go back and look at my record, take first day qualifying in those 2 years as I got better on tour, especially in 88. I had several, in Milwaukee was one of them. I was in, I want to say, if it was second or third after the first day on Wednesday, maybe it was fourth, but I was in the top 5 after the first day of qualifying, first 12 games.
Was this at the old red carpet celebrity?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. The Miller Open, which I think was the Light Beer Championship in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And I came out, woke up the next day. Mark and I are in a hotel room down on 27th Street or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, man, my wrist is really more sore than normal. I'm like, man, this. And I'm pounding aspirins to where I used to take so many aspirins, my head would ring. Ugh. And it's literally. And I don't want to tell you how much. Thank God they eventually invented a leave that's much easier on the stomach. But anyway, and we went to the lanes, and I would put my hand in the ball, and it was like somebody made my span an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/4 of an inch longer. And my hand wouldn't come out of the ball. I fell all the way down to 30th. Oh. Most depressing day of my bowling career, probably, without a doubt. And, I did finish where I had one shot to make a show in Riverside that summer. And I was the last guy up on the lanes, needed a strike to beat Sam Macarone in the position round and make the show. And it was the lowest scoring tournament of 1988. You can look that up. And I threw it so good and left a ring in 10. And Sam, Sam made the stepladder, and then he ran the stepladder and won his first title. Wow. So I always kid him that, my 10-pin lets you become a PBA champion, Sam. I love Sam. And but then by that fall, it had gotten so bad that I couldn't hardly even put my hand in the ball. And long story short, I ended up with the best hand surgeon in the world at the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester, Minnesota. And he did a bone graft surgery that took like 4 hours. And he wanted give me a video of it because he used it for a clinic that he did at a surgical clinic or whatever. And I said, no, I don't want to watch that because I don't want blood. I wish I would have gotten a copy of the video because I would have liked to have kind of looked at a little bit of it at least just to see what he did. But that was almost all of 89 because then I had a cleanup surgery. That was in February of 89. And then in September of 89, I had a cleanup surgery. And then, by 90, I was back to 16 pounds. And then I won my first regional, which was actually my third regional, I think, in 91. And by that time, I was on my way to getting married, and I had a full-time job. And going back on tour, it was in my mind, boy, I could bowl for 3 or 4 days at a time. And I was bowling so good, winning all those regionals. I was like, I could maybe win. I was honest enough about how bad I was, how good I was, and how bad I was. I knew then, but I had it in my mind, boy, I think I might be able to win a title or two. But it just wasn't. It was like, I'm not going to get rich doing this. I like my life. I like being a weekend warrior. I already did 2 years on the tour. Knew I wasn't going to get rich, so I just made the decision that, this isn't going to. I'm not going to go out there and give everything up that I have and try that again. And so I told Mark, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Which in retrospect was the right decision for how things have turned out.
That's what I was going to ask you. Are there regrets now seeing how McDowell turned out, how Shady turned out? Man, Wisconsin puts out a lot of great players. And you've proved that on the regional tour. Tell me about how you made that pivot into the regional tour and started, compiling a bunch of titles.
Well, when I was a PBA member in 86, 87, 88 and bowling on tour, when we were on tour, we were bowling regionals all the time. Mm-hmm. And I won a couple in 87, 88 in there. I had 2 titles before I had the hand surgeries. And I had a lot of success in those. When you're bowling on tour and you come back regionals, like, this is a piece of cake compared to, you're only bowling one region's worth of stars. I only had to bowl Pete and Fahey and Wunderlich and those guys. I didn't have to, and Mark. I didn't have to bowl everybody, all the guys from all the regions. So it seemed easier. Yeah. But when I restarted again in 1990, bowled just a few tournaments as my hand was getting stronger. And there was one at the old Burr Oaks Bowl in Madison, and I finished in the top 5. And that was the first time I made the top 5. It was the fall of 1990. It was first top 5 since the 1988. It had been 2 years. And that was where I was so ecstatic about that. It was, I remember telling the girl who became my wife and ex-wife, says, I'm back. I really can do this again. I said, it's not just a little local tournament. I can't wait for regionals. That was like one of the last ones. I can't wait for regionals next year. And went out bowling, and I won 2 in May of 1991. One in South Chicago Heights and one in Vernon Hills, Illinois. And I remember the first one was South Chicago Heights. Steve Jarrus I beat for the title. And I literally, when I got my balls in the car, I cried because I honestly, I've hardly ever cried about anything in bowling. It's just not my nature. But everything I'd been through, I never thought I would ever have that chance again. And I remember there was a little thing in our local paper here in Madison that the results got reported and they wrote it up. And I cut it out and I sent it to my surgeon because he had told me when I had surgery, I'll get it so you can use a pencil or a pen and you can be a newspaper reporter. He said, you're not going to be a competitive bowler again. Don't count on that. If you can be a league bowler again, be happy. He said, I'm not even going to guarantee you that, but don't ever count on being a professional again. Huh. And so as I did little things, I would send him clips. And I remember sending out and he says, you were wrong. Thank you. That's all I said. Dr. Lynchide, you were wrong. Thank you. And then sent him that clip. And that was pretty cool because I had to go see him once a year for about 3 or 4 years after my surgery, and he would X-ray to see how the bone was staying together. And, and then finally after about 1993, he said, it's as good as it's going to be if you've held this long. Just don't do anything dumb with it. And hopefully it'll stay in one piece. So It has. And then, so obviously I bowled not every regional, but I bowled 20 or so out of 25 that there were every year until 2010, probably, when I finally was getting close to 50 and not willing to go drive 7 hours for a $2,000 regional anymore.
Sure.
Good times.
Yeah. In the midst there of that, of those good times, you sign on with Storm, and that's where I found this part of your bio where you talk about, intense, focused, and extremely driven, and I spelled that wrong, when working, competing, or working out, but very laid back and relaxed in the small amount of free time I have. This is you describing yourself. So, I guess the part that stood out to me was working out. Were you exercising regularly back then? Was there a workout plan that benefited you on the lanes?
When I was from teenage years on, I was running. I mean, I remember posting on my YouTube page some of the old Bowling with a Champ shows, and one of my teammates commented, God, you were skinny then. And I was, I'm just under 200 pounds right now, and I was 175 or so for years. But back then in the 80s, I was like 100 and like Pete Weber, 150 pounds or whatever, 155, because I ran 25 to 40 miles a week, depending, I was running 5-6 miles a day. And that's just what I did then. And I added the gym in 88, my second year on tour. I added the gym and have been at UW Sports Medicine and Fitness Center, which I got into because of my wrist problems. I've been there since 1988. Great. I mean, that's trainers that come from the UW, and that's their sports medicine. You see a lot of high school athletes going through knee surgeries and stuff like that. And it's a great facility to be a part of, and I can't wait to go back. I haven't been there since March 12th, 2020.
Oh, okay.
So, and I mean, I've followed a variety of different programs geared towards bowling, geared towards staying in shape, geared towards fixing all the 800 leg injuries I've had since 2010. So with the trainers there.
Sure. Okay. We talked about the regional tour. Another big part of your success was the USBC Open Championships, where you've accumulated 5 USBC Eagles over the years, the first being in 86. What do you remember about that first one and how special it was to you?
There's a couple things that I can't say on this podcast that I remember about that night. Some fun times that Vegas, because I was in Vegas,
okay,
and I was only 23 or 24. I remember the funny thing, I remember my parents were there. They came because it was Vegas, and they got to see us win that Eagle. A lot of family members were there. And I remember in the third frame of the last game, I slipped and slid into the gutter shooting a 10-pin.
Oh.
So I started strike spare, 10-pin, and I fouled, so I didn't make it. And we had 2 great games. We were like, we're going to take the lead here. And we bowled early in March, so who knows what the score was going to be. But we were like, the year before, we'd finished second in the team all events and should have won that. Very painful to not win that one. And none of us had Eagles, while all of the other team, all those guys had a zillion of them, Wonders and Mizell. So we really wanted to get ours. And I was so mad after that. I remember coming back and saying, I'm off the sheet here. I don't care. And I did. And on one of the my 10th frame strikes were, and you can see it on the YouTube page if you want to witness it, was trip the 4 into the 9, trip the 4 into the 9. And I shot the 4-pin over to the 9 twice in the 10th frame, and then blew the 5 into the 7 for the fill ball. But I slapped one off so hard that I broke my watch. That's how hard I slapped off one of the strikes. And my watch the band shattered. And I picked up my watch and I threw it into my mom and dad in the stands. I was like, just get this out of here. Wow. I was when I was young and very intense. And that was, the thing about that is when we won that, I was like, we're going to win we're going to be in contention to win every year. And, it was a long time before the way things happen. I went on tour, so I didn't get to bowl for a few years. And then when we got back together, a couple of the guys kind of had fallen off. We made some teammate changes. We had a couple of good years, but never really close to winning until I won that all events Eagle in 97. And then the next year we put together our 10-man group that basically has been the same 9 of the same 10 guys since then. So, it was such a dry spell after 86 and 85. I thought, we'll have chances like this every year. And it was so long to have a legitimate chance again. It got to be like, man, maybe that'll only be the one that I win. And then it was like every year once we put our group, it seemed like every year we could have won for how many years in a row.
Yeah. Do they get even sweeter after you win 2, 3, 4, and then 5?
The sweet one is going to be in 2023 when their damn rules no longer keep us from bowling together, and 5 old men are going to get back together and shock the bowling world. Yeah, that's a pipe dream. That would be funny though. That would be the sweetest one if it happened. The odds of that are very, very long.
Hey,
but
you never know, right?
Everyone has something special to it. Every year those 9 games are the funnest 9 games of the year. You're with your friends. For me, they're like family. They're like brothers. We've been together for so long until USBC broke us up. And nothing will ever match 2005 when we took the lead in the team all events. That was one of the other times I cried, because I had an eagle and none of the other 4 guys did, and we kept coming close and close and close, and we couldn't win. It was just like, God, I want to get an eagle with these guys, just one, and I don't care. I just get it. And then Richter and I won the doubles, and we won the team all events. And when we were done there, I mean, that was actually that was only in April, so there was tons of the tournament left that year too. But when we were done, Steve and I knew that 1,500 was a huge score that year for doubles. I felt really confident about that. And the team all events, it was iffy, but it felt so good that we'd taken the lead, because we hadn't left with the lead yet with those 5 guys. The teams were split differently in 2000. The one team shot 30. Shady was Shady, Gutfert, Howry, and them, and they shot 34-70. Shades and them. But it wasn't the way we had our teams then. We were more balanced, I guess, is the way we would refer to it. They had 34-70 and finished 3rd in Albuquerque in 2000. It was like, holy cow. But then finally to break through and win that in 05. And then it seemed like we were so much more relaxed. Every year we went out there, and it was like we were either, other than 1 or 2 years for about a 10-year stretch there, we were either in the lead for some event or nearly took the lead in one of the events year after year after year after year. It was, I have 5, and we have 2 or team all events in a team, but I could have 10 easily. We have 2 seconds in team all events, a 3rd in team. So many weird things happen, but you never ever, because everyone you almost won but didn't, the ones you won, someone else can say they almost won but didn't. And so hopefully things balance out over time. So, I probably won a couple that maybe you could have taken away, and we didn't win a couple that was like, how did we not win that score? Sure. So it all works out. And, I'm not complaining in the least, but when you look back at it, I could easily have 9 or 10, and Shades and Gail and Mac, and Steve could have another 2 or 3 because of the 2 seconds in team all events. We led team 3 years in a row, and we left. There were so many. And Shades and Mac led doubles for almost the whole tournament, and then Brenda Padilla and her husband, she was Brenda Edwards then, I think, but she and her husband, they shot like 15. What was it that year? 1560. Mark and Shades led with 1470 for 3 months, and then they shot 1560, the all-time record, and beat him. So, you can't say, oh, we should have won. You're not going to say that when you lose by that much, but that score was such an outlier. It's like, wow. And so those are the things that happen at that tournament.
Sure. Several years later, in 2011, you are inducted into the USBC Hall of Fame. What was that like? I mean, the grand majority of us will never be in a Hall of Fame, let alone the USBC Hall of Fame.
Well, I will say that I think I nailed my speech for the Madison and the Wisconsin Hall of Fames, and I would say that I choked in the USBC one. I had a speech written that was right within the time limits, and I got emotional up there, lost my train of thought, started babbling, which is something I am not usually something I do. I'm used to talking. I'm used to being, out there in that way. And I get kidded about it all the time whenever I go back for the Hall of Fame. Oh God, you're going to be the guy, the guy, Riggle, there's Riggles, he talked forever. And it wasn't that I meant to talk it was that I choked more in that speech than I've choked any time in my bowling career. So, but that was a magical, I don't really have words. That was so cool to be in that back room. And that was a year, Del Ballard went in that year, and just, in that back room with those people waiting to go up and give our speeches, and Bo Burton was the MC, and we were at the Gaylord in Dallas. The Gaylord, that is like the Bellagio without the casino. In fact, I think it's built, if Texas ever legalizes casinos, I bet you there's going to be a giant casino put in that Gaylord, because that place was a palace. And I got one of the best venues for a USBC Hall of Fame ever in being in that year. Nothing against the other ones, but that place was like, Susie and I are walking around going, whoa, look at this place. It was just like being the best examples, Bellagio or Venetian or someplace, the Wynn in Vegas was amazing. And you get treated so good. And now every year I get to go back You know, I have to pay. The only thing I have to pay for is my plane ticket or drive if it's close, but it's always a plane ticket usually. And everything else that week's taken care of. And we have a private luncheon with the other Hall of Famers and the USBC board. You have the back area where you hang out with the people before you line up to go in, and you're with all those guys. And for me, I'm just a minor league Hall of Famer. You know, I'm in for my USBC. This is Marshall Holman and, you know, and Parker Bone and, you know, all those guys, Walter Ray, the guys that kicked my tail and showed me how good I wasn't. Those are the guys that are in that Hall of Fame, just like the PBA Hall of Fame, which I'll never get in. But with the USBC, they have a minor league category for me. And now I'm getting to be that old guy. Every year I get the pleasure of welcoming in Rick Steelsmith, you know, and you know, Patrick Allen, and every year there's another group of guys, and I get to sit there and listen to their speeches and enjoy. Kelly Kulick had a fabulous speech a couple years ago, and then I played craps that night with her dad, or was it her uncle? Can't remember if it was dad or uncle, but I sat there playing craps with him that night, and I made like $3,000. It was a huge lot. We had the best time because I was at the Orleans, and so those kind of things happen every year at the Hall of Fame. You hang out and have drinks with, you know, a Barry Asher. I sat at a table when you were with Barry and Virginia Norton and the Soutars. It's so much fun. It's so, you know, I'm looking forward to when I first started going there. Bill Lillard was one of the Hall of Famers. He's passed now, sadly, but I cornered him, and, you know, he's the Eagle holder regular division with like 9. And I said, Bill, and he's bowl with the Budweiser. I said, I want to hear some stories, Bill. He goes, I know who you are. You know, I said, Bill, tell me some good stories from the old days. And we'd get talking every year. And the saddest thing was when his health failed and he couldn't come anymore. He made it about 11, 12, and 13, maybe like 3 years. And when he didn't come anymore, I was like, he was one of the guys I always look forward to seeing. And there are many like that. But, you know, he was one because he didn't have a giant PBA Tour career. He was best known for his huge success at Nationals. So, you know, I kind of had a kindred spirit with him there. So enjoyed that.
You've been a Storm staffer for a long time now. What is it like, and why do you stay?
Well, I've told this story before. In late 95, when we were at the Resident Pro Championship, this was when the regional ball contracts became a big thing. And I got an offer in fact, right before the Resident Pro, I got an offer from Ebonite. And they sent me a case of balls. And I'm going to be honest, I threw the balls that they sent. I drilled them, I threw them, and I was like, ugh. You know, and I threw some Ebonite balls. The Green Nitro R was one of my all-time favorite balls, and wasn't too far before that. But these were the ones with the little, not a clock on there, but I can't remember the names. There was a blue one and a black one, and they had like a little clock or something, not a clock, but a little thing on there. And they didn't roll good for me. And this was when Mark was with Ebonite, and I talked with him, and I said, and I liked Bill Supper, I think was with Ebonite then. And I remember calling him and saying, Bill, I feel like a total, I didn't use the word jerk, but you can imagine the word I used. Sure. I said, but I won't do you any good. I don't think these roll not good for me. And I'm just not ready to limit myself. You know, back then companies didn't have 20 balls. They had 2 or 3. And I threw a variety of balls from a variety of companies. I wasn't tied to anybody. I used what I thought worked for me. And you'd see me with Columbia and Brunswick and Hammer, you know, and there wasn't really Storm in the early 90s yet. And then I got an offer from Storm. William Deacon was the guy, Fran's son, gave me a thing. He was passing him out actually at the Resident Pro. And I'd already turned on Ebonite. And I was like, oh, William, he introduced himself. I said, wait, man, I just turned down Ebonite. I don't know about limiting myself. He goes, you don't have to limit yourself. Storm had so few balls then that their deal was you could throw whatever you want. But like when you wanted your regional incentive, $1,000 for winning a regional, you had to throw only a Storm balls. If you threw a different company's ball during that regional and it was on your score sheet, no bonus money.
Sure.
So I thought, well, I have nothing to lose. They're going to send me some free balls. I'm going to try these out. If I don't like them, I won't throw them.
Yeah.
So I got the Forest Fire and the Orange Firestorm. The first regional we bowl in 1996 is in April because the winter we didn't really have many tournaments. And the only in Raytown, Missouri, only thing I throw is a Green Forest, and the Orange Fire won the tournament.
Wow.
$1,000 bonus right away. But this was 96 and 97. They didn't limit us. And if you look at the video of 97 USBCs, I threw a Beast, a Rage. Those are two Columbia balls. I used a Blue Thunder to start team event. And one of my favorite balls of all time, a Red Pulse. So I used
Columbia.
Yes. And great balls all. And Storm was starting to get more balls in their lineup. The Black Thunder joined the two Blue Thunders, and there was the Forest and the Green. And they're like, we have more coming. Contract I get for 1998 got to be exclusive. Called up, said, I think I'm ready. I like what you got. I know you have more coming. Back then, we didn't have a big staff, and you got lots of hands-on. And even though I wasn't on tour, I was one of their bigger names or whatever, and for what I was winning. And so they just treated us like gold, in my opinion. Treated me like gold anyway. And I said, I'm going with this. I'm gonna try it. And I can't imagine that I would have won anything more not being with Storm all these years. I've never felt limited with their arsenal once it expanded. I feel like it's a family. Storm is like a family. I know Bill and Barbara personally. I get a hug. I get, I don't hardly see them because they're in Utah and I only see them at industry events or a couple of tournaments, but I feel like they're family for life. I always feel like it doesn't seem like a business relationship, even though it is. I'm not trying to blow smoke up anyone's butt, but I always felt like I could say anything to the folks at Storm. They've always 1,000% respected what I do as a journalist. They've never once, I'm not going to say they haven't called and said, God, why did you have to write that?
Sure.
But you know what? Bill's always said, I like what you do. Don't ever change what you do. And I'm not going to tell you what to do. And never once in all my life of writing 11thframe.com or the 10-Pin Journal before that have I ever gotten, and the minute that any that clear to them and Turbo and Logo Infusion I Am Bowling, made that clear to all of them. No hard feelings if you feel like I'm reflecting poorly on you in some way with what I write, but I'm going to write what I'm going to write. And never had the slightest bit of grief from any of the companies. And,
I love the natural segue into my next question, because I was going to ask you about journalism, and that has a special place in my heart. I don't know if I've said this before on here, but I'm a journalist as well, or a former journalist, we'll say. I do marketing for an HMO now, but I spent 16 years in local television at different stations in Wisconsin. So, I always admired your work because, you're the guy who's got the passion for the same two things that I do, only you're doing both of them much better than I ever could. Tell me about what came first. Was it the bowling that led to your journalism, or journalism leading into bowling?
Yeah. Well, when I was at Village Lanes and when I was a senior in high school, actually, the Kegler Bowling News then was based in Milwaukee, and they wanted to expand. They wanted to add Janesville and Madison more coverage there. And every bowling center was invited to get somebody to write up their high scores and their news or whatever, a few paragraphs, whatever.
Yeah.
And Village Lanes knew that I was going to UW-Madison. I was kind of a nerdly straight A student type guy. They all knew that. And they said, you want to do this? And I'm like, I don't know how to write. And so I wrote a few graphs up of scores. It wasn't hard to do. And that got printed in the Kegler Bowling News from Village Lanes, whatever. That was the notes from Village. And so that was my senior high school. I go to college. I was in the honors program at UW-Madison, and my track was political science and law school, bowling maybe the tour before I went to law school. But political science was the degree I was aiming for, and with the eye of law school. And then in just November of 80, I get a call from, I think it was Casey Casbaum, who was like the NBA president. He says, you got any interest in writing a little bowling stuff for the Capital Times. I know Dave Zwiefel, the editor, their bowling columnist, is retiring. They want somebody. I recommended you because I know you're writing that from Village. I know you're a sharp cookie. You're going to UW. And I was like, well, wow, that's like a real newspaper.
Yeah.
I said, I don't have any skills for this. So my very first bowling column ran in the Capital Times on December 7th, 1980.
Wow.
And I still have it somewhere in the basement,
Yeah.
the actual paper printout of it, because there's no digital of it. And it was awful, I'm sure. And I worked with the sports editor to get better and the assistant sports editor. And after a couple bowling columns, they're like, you want to go out and cover a high school basketball game? I'm like, I don't know how to do that. What are you talking about? And they said, you'll be fine. Just go out. You know how to watch sports. You're a sports fan. Keep a game log. Like, they showed me one, and get some quotes from the coaches after the game. Come back. We'll help you write it up. And they were an afternoon paper, so I could spend all Friday night. The deadline was Saturday morning at 10 a.m. So yeah. I sat there with someone helping me, and then turned it in, and then they edited it, and it ran. And then that was Saturday, probably Monday or Sunday or something, I went in there and they went over what they did, and that process continued. So I was basically, without any journalism training, I was getting journalism training on the job from real journalists without being in J school or anything like that. And I was beyond not ready for that. Believe me, it was a joke that I was doing that. But I knew bowling, they needed that, and I was smart, and I didn't misspell words. I was good at that, and I knew grammar. I just needed to learn how to write in a journalistic manner and figure out, I read the two newspapers every day and 10 magazines, Sports Illustrated, Bowler's Journal, Bowling Diet, so I knew what I saw there. It was just a matter of training my brain to produce that. And by the first semester of which would have been my first semester of my sophomore year in 1981 at UW, I switched over I applied for the J school and got in there. And so that was how I chose bowling and journalism, which were two things that were huge when I was young and two things that died as I grew older, kind of. Yeah. Not totally died, but it's like, how did I make those decisions? Those things looked so great when I was 17, 18 years old. And needless to say, yeah. So luckily I'm going to make it to the end of my journalism career here. Yeah. And the State Journal is still there. Sure. And I've got more out of my bowling career than I could ever want. So, and hopefully bowling's on the way back up, and who knows, maybe journalism too. But that's how I ended up switching over to journalism. So bowling, to answer your question, bowling got me into journalism.
Okay.
And then journalism hooked me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope you don't mind me throwing the 11thframe.com up on the screen so people can get a look.
Oh no!
If I can find my share tab.
Get a few more people to spend the $2 a month.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, and there's my phone going off. I hope you can't hear that. Let's see. So my quote here that I found from there, the 11thframe.com is as independent as any voice in bowling can be. You might not agree with me, but you can trust what you get from me is me and nothing else. So how do you maintain that? Is it hard?
Oh, no, it's easy because this isn't my living.
Yeah.
I when I started 11thframe.com, it was actually part of the Capital Times digital thing. And I was like, let me do this on the side. This is when we were first transitioning into the internet big time with the Cap Times in the late 2000s. And I said, let me just try that. And then they saw the traffic and was like, holy cow. Yeah, okay, you can spend some time each day doing that along with your duties. And then it got to the point where it wasn't ever big enough for them to care that much about it. So when I said, do you mind if and then by then I was out of the Cap Times and just part of the Madison.com digital team that served the State Journal and the Cap Times. The Cap Times wasn't a daily newspaper anymore. And I just asked, my boss at Madison.com, hey, I want to take this out and put it on its own website. Mike Flanagan had convinced me. I got Brian Burkhart. He runs my websites. He'll build you a website. We'll get it out on its own website. Someday you'll be charging people for that. No one's going to pay for this. And I said, that's not going to happen. So it was like 2012 when it became www.11thframe.com. And eventually I started, instead of it just being more or less fun stuff, me writing about my own bowling and writing about, my opinions of the tour show that happened that week and trying to get some inside information. And every once in a while interviewing somebody like Jack Mordini explaining why the brackets were picked up at the Binions in downtown Vegas, which pissed people off, instead of at the convention center. So I would occasionally do a real serious story, and I started doing more serious stories when I took it on its own, and it just kind of started snowballing. And it got to the point where I had such a following and I was taken so seriously, and everyone was on my case. Hey, you should at least make some money on this. And Mike was also like, Brian's doing all this work to keep your site up, and you're not giving him any money. He said, you got to charge. So I really started charging. It's $199 a month or $19.99 a year, which is $166 a month. At the peak, I had a little over 1,500 subscribers. Now I'm in the 1,200s, I think.
Okay.
So it's not like I'm getting, but it allowed me to pay Brian money for his time and compensate him fairly for the work that he put in. Actually, not fairly. If I was paying him what his rate was. Of course, if I was making what my rate is at the newspaper for the hours I make, it would be a lot more than $1.99 a month.
Sure.
But I don't know how many people would subscribe. And I'm not. So what I'm saying is, I don't make my living from 11thframe.com. I did it for years without charging anything. No one owns me. No one tells me what to do. I'm not like Bowler's Journal that was economically beholden to USBC and BPAA and now is owned by USBC and does whatever they're told to do or not to do, which everyone knows. And I love those guys, but it's the reality. No one tells me what to do. I'm the guy that can write what I wrote about Chad Murphy, can write what I've written about so many other topics. I call him as I see him. You can disagree. Like I said, you can disagree with my viewpoint, but you can trust that the viewpoint you're getting from me is my viewpoint and no one else's. It's not anyone telling me what to write. It's what I think. And you're getting 40 years of a professional journalist. And I follow, because this is the agreement I have with this State Journal and Capital newspapers, is I follow the same ethics that I follow at the newspaper, or they wouldn't let me do it. Sure. And I've run more than a few stories past my editors just to say, tell me what you think. How's it look? I'm totally clear on the website. If you find it, you can see that I'm a Storm staffer and I disclose all my conflicts or whatever. They're all out there. I don't hide anything. And it is what it is. If you, in all the years of all the stuff I've written, I have had typos. I have had years wrong. I have misspelled names. I have gotten little facts wrong. I've made errors. I've never once had to retract a story. I've never once had anybody try to sue me charge that they were misquoted. I record all the interviews I do of any substance so that I make sure that I always get things right. I've done that my whole journalistic career. If there's a journalist you can trust in the world, I'm it. And that's the thing I pride myself on. And I don't have anybody telling me what I'm doing. So you can dislike what I write, but you can trust that what's there is me.
Yeah. See, in TV, we get away with the misspellings as long as the viewer isn't watching closed captioning.
See, the thing is I always say this, it's easier. I would rather have to spell a name correctly than pronounce it correctly. Because there's some names that I can spell right that I still can't pronounce right. Like Chris Kelso. I know it's Kelso, but I have to stop because I keep wanting to say Ketzlow because I knew a guy named Ketzlow. So I apologize, Chris. I called you that wrong earlier. If you hear this, I know it's Kelso, but I knew a guy named Ketzlow. Craig Elliott runs Bowlstream TV. The president of the Madison Area Builders Association for years was Chuck Elliott. And I covered the Parade of Homes when I was a business reporter for 10 years. I covered the Parade of Homes every year. I dealt with Chuck all the time. So I have written Chuck Elliott instead of Craig Elliott. God, I don't know how many times because that name was stuck in my head.
Sure.
But you can go back and get that. But when you say something wrong or mispronounce a name, you can't go back and edit it or whatever.
That's true.
So I will take the spelling. I can look up the spelling of something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, where do you go from here in bowling? You've talked on other shows and other things that you're not really bowling during the pandemic. You've talked about others who do. You've talked about DGAFs, which, for the purpose of this show, I'll call "Don't Give a Feff." It's a fine line with those of us who care about bowling. I mean, I'm in your camp where I'm not bowling right now, but man, I want those centers and those pro shops to be around when I'm ready to bowl again.
I'm the guy. There's a guy, Z-Dog MD on YouTube. Dr. Zuman Mahanti is a fabulous guy. He's a Stanford doctor. He's got a gigantic following on social media. He tells it straight and gets like Dr. Paul Offit on there, famous vaccinologist, created a couple vaccines. I discovered him during the pandemic. I listened to all the shows he has. He has all kinds of experts on there. He calls himself from the alt middle because he's not of either extreme. And that's how I think of myself. I greatly appreciate the many people who go out there and bowl and keep bowling centers going. Yeah. Susie's dad is 80. He has very bad health issues. Trust me, I won't waste anybody's time with him. If he got COVID, he's dead. The odds are he's not going to survive it. There's no way. My mom is 88. Her husband's 91. They're in great health. They still live independently. If they got it, they're in trouble. I have basically not seen my mom other than outside for 15 minutes at a time, 3 or 4 times since last March. That's it. And they've stuck to themselves. They've each got their first shot now. Susie's takes care of her dad. So I told her at the beginning of this, I'm in with you. I know what we're going to have to do until this gets over. I said, we'll do nothing. You take care of your dad. We don't have any other choice. You can't hire someone to come in there and take care of someone like that because you can't trust them more than you would trust yourself. Sure. That person gets it, living their normal life. We're not going to forgive ourselves if they give it to him, and he can't take care of himself. He sends his grocery list by mail, regular mail. So he's a sharp cookie. He's an old ex-Marine and all that, but he's not good with computers. He's a stubborn old guy. He needs help. He can't drive, and he doesn't want to go out, and we don't want him to go out. Anyway, we don't want him out in the world. He's gone out just for doctor's appointments at it. He needs a couple of, like new hip replacement for the second time. He might need a pacemaker. He can't get any of that. He's got the first shot. Mm-hmm. So once he gets the second shot and 2 more weeks go by, he's golden. We don't have to worry about that. That'll be mid to late March. I don't know what the exact timing is. My mom and her husband, same deal. Once all that happens, I'm getting ready to figure out what balls to order. I'm getting ready to start practicing. I'm interested in bowling our city tournament because we have measures much like you would see at nationals. I'm not bowling our state tournament because they're in the DGAF category.
Which has already started, I believe, at Bolero in Wauwatosa, and was the other house Village
Bowl in Menominee Falls.
Okay.
That's what the state association is doing. Mm-hmm. I won't compete when 90% of the bowlers are running around without masks and there's 10 guys on every pair and there's no open pairs. The bowling centers are packed. Just like I wouldn't have bowled that tournament in Ashwaubenon that had 295 bowlers, my God, in January. And from people who were there, they said 10 to 15% wore masks. But I'm glad those people are bowling.
Yeah.
I'm glad that state is running this way to a degree. I hope no one gets super sick out of this. I'm not taking part in it. I'm sending in the paperwork for my teammates who are going to bowl. I'm going to help them out. Not me. That's not how I'm going to. We've gone this far. I can wait for another 2 months to get a shot before I go expose myself to that. But I'm going to go bowl nationals without having a vaccine if we don't get it in time. We're scheduled for May. We're going to drive if we're not vaccinated. We have N95 masks. I'll follow all the procedures. I've looked at USBC's protocols that everyone hates, but those are the way to do it safely. As long as they're going to use those protocols, I'll bowl.
Yeah.
You know, one team per pair, everyone's wearing masks, all the various measures, you can read them yourself. Our city tournament is basically doing that. I'm trying to see if we can find dates to go. Might not work with our normal group with Derek Olf and McDowell and Gail Myers and that, but maybe we're just started looking at it. That would be my return, or USBC's will be my return, not state. But I'm not going to condemn state, and I'm not going to condemn these other tournaments because I'm selfish. Mm-hmm. I want these bowling centers to survive. I want them to be there when this is over, when we're all vaccinated and next season things are back to normal. So I'm not on a soapbox condemning people. I hate that Michigan has been closed and now just barely open. I hate that California is still closed. It's like, I understand your viewpoints, but let them have the opportunity to open with proper measures and stay in business, and let people who are willing to take some risk go out there and live a life. And those who aren't can be like us and stay home. I think, I mean, we could talk all night on this, but I think many states have proven that, you know, some states, it's like Texas, it's like in the South, there is no COVID is always my joke. Stuart Williams and Barnes say that on their Beef and Barnesy. There's no COVID in Texas because they have tournaments every weekend. And, you know, you see videos of it. Nobody's wearing masks hardly, you know, and we got them up here too. And that's fine. I don't want the cops to go in there and arrest people. I'm in the alt middle. I know what the science says. I know what the best practices are. And if you don't follow them, I'm not going to be part of it. But I'm not going to tell you that you can't have this other side and let people do that, because this is America. And to a degree, if people want to willingly subject themselves to that, I don't mind that. If no one's holding a gun to their head, no one's holding a gun to my head, so I'm not going to go take part in that. If other people want to, and that keeps businesses going, you know, there's more to balance here than purely COVID. Yeah. There is an economy of a country. There's a way of life. There's things that are going to go on for decades from now after COVID's gone, and destroying huge slices of our economy is, I think that damage in the long term is going to be greater than some of this. And people who don't want to take the risk can do what me and Susie have done to protect her dad, and now basically to protect ourselves, because if I've gone 11 months, what's two more? Because I might be that 1/2 of 1% or whatever it is, or the 10% that end up in the hospital. I don't know. I have several friends who've died. I have many who've been very sick or in the hospital and barely made it. I know a few that are long haulers that are friends. You never know. It's like playing Russian roulette with a gun with 100 chambers and one of them has a bullet. What if the one is, you get the wrong chamber, you know? So if it had been from the beginning and we hadn't had to worry about her dad or my mom, I probably would have bowled from the start. I would have been wearing a mask every time because I'm smart enough to understand what's going on, unlike a lot of people who are smart enough and don't care. And I would have been wearing an N95 and felt, you know, and elbows and that. And if there was 295 bowlers or 10 people on a pair, I'm not bowling that tournament. Ones that are a little more spread out and follow things a little better, like the 11thframe.com Open did. I went to that and for the final day to broadcast, I would have bowled that. They had pretty good measures there. But so you get where I'm saying that I'm like you. It sounds like I'm in the middle there. And that's a tough place to be because I get grief from both sides. Yep. One side yells at you because, oh boy, it's nothing, get out here. And the other side said, how can you stick up for those guys at all? They're out there spreading COVID and all that. I'm like, I see there's more than just this, you know, one thing here. This is a very complex situation.
Yeah. And like you said, it's, you know, it's America, and part of what makes us great is that variety of opinions, that variety of, you know, ways to do bowling in life. You know, in the end,
and we here didn't really have much choice anyway, because Dane County has been as locked down for most of this last year as Michigan, not quite as bad as, say, California, but we've had unbelievably strict measures from November to January, there was basically no bowling at all.
Yeah.
The Madison Scratch Tour did not bowl all year. The Henry Hitter didn't bowl. The Prairie Open didn't bowl. There's all these other little tournaments that were held where you moved pairs and all that. They just said, screw it, we're not bowling. But now our city tournament, we didn't think we were going to have it. Now they're going to have it in March and April as things have starting to ease up. The vaccines are taking hold. Enough people have been, there's a little bit of herd immunity because 100 million people probably by some estimates have had it and have some immunity. So the spread's going down. The cases are dropping humongously. There's less testing too, but there's also 20 some million people have been vaccinated now. So we're on the downside of this. 6 months from now, America's going to be very close to some form of normalcy. And so I'm glad for everybody that got through it to this, and whatever you've done to that, when we're done with this, I'm not holding anything against anybody on either side. Yeah. And you made your choices just like I made mine. I wrote that last June. It's a personal choice. Live with it.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. So from there, let's go to our foundation frame. We've actually got a couple of comments. This is, I'm going to guess that's Rory Holland, cheering for Simo there. I don't know. I don't have,
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. And that's a pretty safe bet. Watching him that first show when he came out and roped it 100 miles an hour and took down. That was the show where Kelso had gone up the ladder, right?
I believe so. Yep, the first one.
And I was like, wow. I mean, Simo's got more tricks, even the backup balls. He's got more tricks than anybody in bowling. And if he can figure something out to win for sure. But like I said, if he gets the top seed, boy, watch out.
Sure. He said, don't change it now. I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, and that's kind of the give and take of this, taking viewer questions at the end. But, it's kind of that way, designed that way for replay viewers in mind. Baton Rouge was pretty sweet, he also says.
I think he was involved in lane maintenance in Baton Rouge.
Ah, okay. All right.
In fact, there's a famous picture that it was a joke picture that he made, and he uses it as blackmail on me because it was like a bottle of oil or something. He goes, Riggs's team's oil or something like that. He took a picture. He goes, I got this. If you, I'm like, yeah, okay.
And then he also mentioned an Ebonite Omega. Now
that was it. That was the ball I was trying to remember.
Was that the one? Now,
yep. The black one was the one I threw, and I didn't like it. The ironic thing is a few months later, the blue one, baby blue, real light blue, came out, and I shot like 2,200 in our city tournament with the blue one.
Oh, okay.
So if they'd come out with the blue one, maybe I would have ended up an Ebonite staffer. I don't know.
Sure.
But the black one, I had 4 of them. I drilled 4 of them 4 different ways, and they didn't work good for me. I mean,
yeah. I got to admit, I'm a little partial to that name because my first 300 was an Ebonite Omega R, the teal one. So, I never drilled another one, but, it was good for me for a moment in time back in
Nitro was one of my all-time favorite balls, too. Nitro and the Nitro R, and then the green one. But that blue Nitro, boy, that was one of my all-time favorite balls. Won several regionals with that.
Yeah, the urethane one. All right, so as we do on every episode, we're going to take this off the sheet where we have you suggest someone that you think would be a good interview for us to have on Bowling with the Fef. So, Jeff Richgels, who would you like to challenge to go off the sheet this week?
Well, I would narrow this down to 2 people and to try and choose. I mean, you could pick any of my teammates, obviously, but I mean, if you wanted one that everyone knows and people would probably love to hear what he's doing now and hear stories about the tour, that McDowell would be fabulous. But a guy that is so under the radar is Satan, Steve Richter, my doubles partner, one of our teammates. And the Satan comes from one year. He's got this real long, thin head if you look at him, and he had a goatee one year. And he shows up with this goatee, and I'm like, oh, my God, it's Satan. Just the way he
Oh
looked, it was like
no.
it made me think of the way the devil caricature is. If you look at anything, but anyway, but just because no one's ever really heard from him,
Okay.
he's the quiet guy in our group that no one ever taught. He doesn't talk that much. He doesn't stand out. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He wasn't a tour star. He's not controversial like Gail and outspoken on social media like Gail is. And he's not in the USBC Hall of Fame like Shades. He's just like this background guy. But the thing about Steve is you and him, he could talk technical. He's got all these years in Pro Shop, and then he's got all these years with Storm and Roto in the tech there. And he can tell stories too about us bowling and that. And he's got a PBA regional title. You can have him tell you about beating Mika. Mika bowled in, that was in lacrosse.
Okay.
07, I think. I think Mika made that step ladder. It's so long ago, it's hard to remember. But I know Steve won in lacrosse, a PBA regional. So everybody on our team has a regional title thanks to that. As a non-member, he won that, obviously.
Right.
But he could tell a lot of good stories about bowling, and also he could tell you a lot of fascinating technical stuff. If you think your listeners would want to get into some of the nuances. I mean, he's one of the guys I go to when I don't know stuff. It's like, Steve, what do you think? How should I drill this ball? And because he knows the VALs and all this stuff that I pick. I'm like, well, how should I drill this? And tell me why it would work. And I drill it and I throw it and I bowl. And he's kind of the brains of the operation away from all those years with Storm and doing, he would put the oil patterns down back in the days when the USBC was transparent. We'd do team practice. We'd have it at Odyssey where he was manager. He'd set it out. He would help us devise game plans. Him and Shades were probably the two best for that. Steve's a heck of a coach too. I mean, So, I mean, if you wanted a real fun, featurey look back at the tour, Mark would be awesome. And, if you wanted a little more deep nuance, the guy that no one knows, Steve. And Steve could tell you about, he won the mini eliminator one year too. How many people know that?
Wow. Okay.
There's lots of things about him a lot of people don't know. So,
well, Mark and Steve, if you're watching, please get a hold of me, message me on Facebook, email me at bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com. We will get you on the show if you're interested. I think both of those perspectives would be very interesting, especially for me, but absolutely for our viewing audience. And
Steve's going in the Wisconsin Hall of Fame this year.
Okay. Wow.
We've booted the Wisconsin USBC booted it from January to May 22nd.
Okay. Is
the induction. So that's going to be in the mock area. That should be, hopefully by then, things, just about it. By that time, vaccine should be pretty close to readily available. And most people, I think, that really want one probably could have got one by then. Sure. Close to it. So hopefully the world will be in a much better place. And because I don't think in January we would have wanted to have a banquet hall with 300 people in it.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go. That wouldn't be smart.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we have really one item left to discuss, and that is our episode 16, which is coming up on Thursday, February 25th. This is one that I am absolutely looking forward to. Jeff, you're our first USBC Hall of Famer to be on Bowling with the Fef. And this guest coming up next week is going to be our second. He is USBC Hall of Famer and PBA Hall of Famer Marshall Holman. We've chatted back and forth over the past couple weeks. Those pictures he submitted to me, one is pretty much current day. That's the one on the right. The one on the left is from 1975. We're calling it Here Comes the Meteor because, of course, he's known as the Medford Meteor. Jeff, Marshall. I guess tell me your thoughts on him appearing on the show and maybe your favorite story about Marshall.
Oh yeah, I could have 20 stories about Marshall, but him and Mark Roth, but him mostly was my hero growing up. If you look at my style on those old champ shows when I was a little more flexible and I really bent over, I looked a lot like, the way I thought Marshall bowled. And I covered him in the Miller Open when I was with the Cap Times. I would drive down there and cover that tournament. And I'll never forget one year the fans were on him when he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
They were on him. They cheered when he left a pocket 7-10.
Ugh.
And he came back giving him the, one of those a little bit. And because he was funny. And and then a couple of years later, it was the most amazing thing. He was the top seed in the tournament. I think Wayne Webb beat him. It might have been like 85, but he was top seed, and he's running through the tournament. And that place, Red Carpet Celebrity, every person in that bowling center was going bananas for Marshall. It was the most amazing turnaround of like the bad guy became all of a sudden the fan favorite. I mean, and he was always my favorite, even though I'd cringe a little at some of the things he did, but I did some of those things too, Yeah. But he was just so electric to watch, and you waited for the explosion that he would have, or the fry, or whatever. And he was so much fun to watch, and he was so freaking good.
Yeah.
And I interviewed him many times there, and then I was like, one of them was after I'd beat Barry Asher for the team trials and made Team USA, and all of a sudden Marshall kind of knew who I was because he's buddies with Asher. Yeah. And then I covered the Miller in 1986, and I said, Marshall, I'm going to see, and he'd gotten to know McDowell, and I'll see you next year, Marshall, and I'll be bowling against you here. And he goes, I'm ready, one of those. And the very first top 24 I made was in 1987 in Dublin. I crossed with Marshall. We qualified, I think it was 11th and 12th or 13th and 14th. So we bowled the very first match, because at the first matches, you line up in the order of your qualifying. So it's like, this is like the greatest thing ever for me. And I'm telling him this too.
Sure.
And comes to the 10th, I need to double to win to beat him for the 30 bonus pins. I get the first strike, Greek Church the second one.
Oh.
And I ended up 24th. But I mean, to have competed alongside him and all the other people who are, my childhood heroes was so much fun. And to become friends with a guy like that, and to see him become a popular elder statesman that he is, a great color analyst. Mm-hmm. God, I like Randy. He's fun in that. I loved Marshall because he was so incisive, and he was kind of like a funnier Chris Barnes that gave you not quite as analytical as Barnes is, but that same kind of just incisive stuff and straight to the heart of things, what you're thinking about up there. And I mean, straight, Marshall just tells you what he thinks. There's no couching it at all. He's harsh on himself. And I'll never forget one last thing on him.
Yeah.
When Belmonte won the PBA World Championship a couple of years ago, I think that was the one that tied Don Carter for most major titles in PBA history. I'm sitting here watching it. I think it was a Thursday night. And I see Marshall sitting in the audience next to Tom Clark, right behind the pair. And so I'm messaging Tom, and I said, Tom, as the show gets done, or just getting done, I said, Belmo's going to win. He's going to break Carter's record. Will you please ask Marshall to look at his phone and make sure he does? Because I didn't know if Marshall would look at his phone. So I didn't have Marshall's phone number. I Facebooked Marshall a message then. Mm-hmm. Marshall, I want to interview you when you get a chance. As soon as you do, when this show's over, 15 minutes. Tell me what you think of Belmo compared to Earl Anthony, Mark Roth, everybody, Don Carter, everybody, Dick Weber you bowled against, Walter Ray. I want your perspective. And if you go back and look, and he like messaged me, goes, here's my number. I got yours. I'm calling you in 10 minutes. And like 10 minutes later, phone rings, half hour on the phone.
Wow.
Great. One of the best interviews I ever had. If you go back and look at that story I wrote on that World Championship win, it was a one at Thunder Bowl where he beat Buttriff.
Sure.
Marshall's interview was so good. To me, that was the best game story, as we call it, event reporting on an event that had just happened, like a baseball game or here was a bowling match, that I ever wrote. Because Marshall made that, he provided historical perspective of a guy who'd seen all these guys all the way along, from back to Dick Weber to Belmo and Walter Ray, and bowled against everyone except Belmo.
Right.
He bowled against Pete as well. And his perspective on the GOAT debate was awesome. And I've thanked him every time I see him. I said, I quit now, but next time I saw him, I was like, thank you, Marshall, so much for that. Not just because I wanted to write a great story, but just so the readers got to hear that perspective that no one else could offer but him. And I was the vehicle to bring that to people. And I mean, that's the kind of person Marshall is. For all the people that saw him on TV in the day, that guy. No, that's the person Marshall is the guy that took the time after the show was done to call me to spend a half hour. It was like 25 minutes to a half hour, just answering every question in great detail, thoughtful stuff about, how Jason Belmonte's place in history.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy, Marshall. You'll have a fabulous interview with him. He's awesome.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And those of you out there, if you're interested in hearing him and asking him questions, please, come see our show on the YouTube channel Thursday, February 25th, 6 p.m. Central. We'd be happy to to take your questions and pose them to really one of the greatest of all time. Marshall is an all-timer, and really psyched to have him on Bowling with the Pfeff.
He could have bowled good on TV. He might have been in that GOAT debate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he'll tell you that. He's real good about talking about his failures that way, too. He's so self-aware and so self-honest and critical. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, thank you so much for the time. It's been a pleasure catching up, learning about your bowling story, and getting your thoughts on the Players Championship. Nothing but the best to you and your family as we get through this tough time, really.
Anytime, Pfeff. I watch every week and can't wait to be back there on the lanes myself in a few weeks here.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, if anybody out there is interested in coming on the show, let me know. bowlingwiththepfeff@yahoo.com is the email address. You can catch up with me on our Facebook group, which is about 92 strong now. So thank you so much for those of you who have joined on. Hopefully we've provided enough quality content for you to make it worth your while, and really appreciate you coming on board. Other than that, be just and fear not. We will see you next Thursday night where we will interview Marshall Holman here live on the YouTube channel. Have a great week, everybody.